Myst is a graphic adventure puzzle video game designed and directed by the brothers Robyn and Rand Miller. It was developed by Cyan, Inc., and published by Broderbund. The Millers began working on Myst in 1991 and released it for the Macintosh on September 24, 1993. It was developer Cyan's largest project to date. Remakes and ports of the game have been released for platforms including Sega Saturn, PlayStation, 3DO, Microsoft Windows, Atari Jaguar CD, CDI, Amigos, PlayStation Portable, Nintendo DS, iOS, and OS X. Myst puts the player in the role of the stranger, who uses a special book to travel to the island of Myst. There, the player uses other special books written by an artisan and explorer named Attribution to travel to several worlds known as ages. Clues found in each of these ages help to reveal the backstory of the game's characters. The game has several endings, depending on the course of action the player takes. Upon release, Myst was a surprise hit, with critics lauding the ability of the game to immerse players in the fictional world. The game was the best-selling PC game until The Sims exceeded its sales in 2002. Myst helped drive adoption of the then-nascent CD-ROM format. Myst's success spawned 4 direct video game sequels as well as several spin-off games and novels. Gameplay. The gameplay of Myst consists of a first-person journey through an interactive world. The player moves the character by clicking on locations shown on the screen. The scene then crossfades into another frame, and the player can continue to explore. Players can interact with specific objects on some screens by clicking or dragging them. To assist in rapidly crossing areas already explored, Myst has an optional zip feature. When a lightning bolt cursor appears, players can click and skip several frames to another location. While this provides a rapid method of travel, it can also cause players to miss important items and clues. Some items can be carried by the player and read, including journal pages which provide backstory. Players can only carry a single page at a time, and pages return to their original locations when dropped. To complete the game, the player must explore the seemingly deserted island of Myst. There the player discovers and follows clues to be transported via linking books to several ages, each of which is a self-contained mini-world. Each of the ages, named Selenitic, Stoneship, Mechanical, and Channelwood, requires the user to solve a series of logical, interrelated puzzles to complete its exploration. Objects and information discovered in one age may be required to solve puzzles in another age, or to complete the game's primary puzzle on Myst. For example, in order to activate a switch, players must first open a safe and use the matches found within to start a boiler. Apart from its predominantly non-verbal storytelling, Myst's gameplay is unusual among adventuring computer games in several ways. The player is provided with very little backstory at the beginning of the game, and no obvious goals or objectives are laid out. This means that players must simply begin to explore. There are no obvious enemies, no physical violence, and no threat of dying at any point, although it is possible to reach a few losing endings. There is no time limit to complete the game. The game unfolds at its own pace and is solved through a combination of patience, observation, and logical thinking. Plot. Players assume the role of an unnamed person known as the Stranger, who stumbles across an unusual book titled Myst. The Stranger reads the book and discovers a detailed description of an island world called Myst. Placing his hand on the last page, the Stranger is whisked away to the world described, and is left with no choice but to explore the island. Myst contains a library where 2 additional books can be found, colored red and blue. These books are traps that hold Cyrus and Akanar, the sons of Attribution, who once lived on Myst Island with his wife Catherine. Attribution writes special, linking books, that transport people to the worlds, or ages, that the books describe. From the panels of their books, Cyrus and Akanar tell the Stranger that Attribution is dead. Each brother blames the other for the death of their father, as well as the destruction of much of Attribution's library. Both plead for the stranger to help them escape. However, the books are missing several pages, rendering the son's messages initially unclear and riddled with static. As the stranger continues to explore the island, books linking to more ages are discovered hidden behind complex mechanisms and puzzles. The stranger must visit each age, find the red and blue pages hidden there, and return to Myst Island. These pages can then be placed in the corresponding books. As the stranger adds more pages to these books, the brothers can speak more clearly. After collecting 4 pages, the brothers can talk clearly enough to tell the stranger where the 5th page is hidden. It also allows the player to more accurately judge each brother's personality. If the stranger gives either brother their 5th page, they will be free. The stranger is left with a choice to help Cyrus, Akinar, or neither. Cyrus and Akinar beg the stranger not to touch the green book that is stored in the same location as their final pages. They claim that it is a book like their own that will trap the stranger. In truth, it leads to DNI, where Atras is imprisoned. When the book is opened, Atras asks the stranger to bring him a final page that is hidden on Myst Island. Without it, he cannot bring his sons to justice. The game has several endings, depending on the player's actions. Giving either Cyrus or Akinar the final page of their book causes the stranger to switch places with the son, leaving the player trapped inside the prison book. Linking to DNI without the page Atras asks for leaves the stranger and Atras trapped on DNI. Linking to DNI with the page allows Atras to complete his Myst book and return to the island. Upon returning to the library, the player finds the red and blue books gone, and burn marks on the shelves where they used to be. Development. We started our design work and realized that we would need to have even more story and history than would be revealed in the game itself. It seemed having that depth was just as important as what the explorer would actually see. Rand Miller, on developing Myst's fictional history work on Myst began in 1991. The game's creative team consisted of the brothers Rand and Robyn Miller, with help from sound designer Chris Brandkamp, 3D artist and animator Chuck Carter, Richard Watson, Bonnie McDowell, and Ryan Miller, who together made up Cyan, Inc. The company had previously only made children's games. Myst was conceived by the brothers as a challenging but aesthetically simple game that would appeal to adults. Myst was not only the largest collaboration Cyan had attempted at the time, but also took the longest to develop. According to Rand Miller, the brothers spent months solely designing the look and puzzles of the ages, which were influenced by earlier whimsical worlds made for children. According to the creators, the game's name, as well as the overall solitary and mysterious atmosphere of the island, was inspired by the book The Mysterious Island by Jules Verne. At first, the developers had no idea how they would actually create the physical terrain for the ages. Eventually, they created grayscale height maps, extruding them to create changes in elevation. From this basic terrain, textures were painted onto a color map which was wrapped over the landscapes. Objects such as trees were added to complete the design. Rand noted that attention to detail allowed Myst to deal with the limitations of CD-ROM drives and graphics, stating, "A lot can be done with texture, like finding an interesting texture you can map into the tapestry on the wall. Spending a little extra time to actually put the bumps on the tapestry, putting screws in things. These are the things you don't necessarily notice, but if they weren't there, would flag to your subconscious that this is fake." Much of the early development time was spent devising puzzles in the ages, but the story was secondary. "We were place designers, and the maps kind of fueled the story," Rand said. The game was created on Macintosh computers, principally Macintosh Quadris. The graphics were individual shots of fully rendered rooms. Overall, Myst contains 2,500 frames, one for each possible area the player can explore. Each scene was modeled and rendered in Strativision 3D, with some additional modeling in Macromedia Macro Model. The images were then edited and enhanced using Photoshop 1.0. The original Macintosh version of Myst was constructed in HyperCard. Each age was a unique HyperCard stack. Navigation was handled by the internal button system and HyperTalk scripts, with image and QuickTime Movie display passed off to various plugins. Essentially, Myst functions as a series of separate multimedia slides linked together by commands. As the main technical constraint that impacted Myst was slow CD-ROM drive read speeds, Cyan had to go to great lengths to make sure all the game elements loaded as quickly as possible. Images were stored as 8-bit picked resources with custom color palettes and QuickTime still image compression. Animated elements such as movies and object animations were encoded as QuickTime movies with Cinepack compression. In total, there were more than 66 minutes of QuickTime animation. This careful processing made the finished graphics look like true color images despite their low bit depth. The stills were reduced in size from 500 kilobytes to around 80 kilobytes. Audio Crisp Bandcamp produced most of the ambient and incidental sounds in the game. To make sure the sounds fit, Bandcamp had to wait until the game's visuals were placed in context. Sound effects were drawn from unlikely sources. The noise of a fire in a boiler was created by driving slowly over stones in a driveway. Because recordings of actual fire did not sound like fire burning, the chimes of a large clock tower were simulated using a wrench, then transposed to a lower pitch. At first, Myst had no music, because the Millers did not want music to interfere with the gameplay. After a few tests, they realized that the background music did not adversely affect the game in fact, seemed to really help the mood of certain places that you were at in the game. Robyn Miller ended up composing 40 minutes of synthesized music that was used in the game and later published as Myst, the soundtrack. Initially, Cyan released the soundtrack via a mail-order service, but before the release of Myst's sequel, Virgin Records acquired the rights to release the soundtrack, and the CD was re-released on April 21, 1998. Reception: Myst was commercially successful on release. Along with The Seventh Guest, it was widely regarded as a killer application that accelerated the sales of CD-ROM drives. The game's success also led to a number of games which sought to copy Myst's success, referred to as Myst clones. Myst was the best-selling PC game throughout the 1990s, until The Sims exceeded its sales in 2002. The PC version of Myst holds an average score of 82.57% at GameRankings based on 7 reviews. Although the subsequent remakes of the game and the console ports have generally received lower average scores, Myst's success baffled some, who wondered how a game that was seen as little more than an interactive slideshow turned out to be a hit. Myst was generally praised by critics. Wired and the New York Times suggested that Myst was evidence that video games could in fact evolve into an art form. Entertainment Weekly reported that some players considered Myst's virtual morality a religious experience. Aarhus University professor Soren Pold pointed to Myst as an excellent example of how stories can be told using objects rather than people. Laura Evenson, writing for the San Francisco Chronicle, pointed to adult-oriented games like Myst as evidence the video game industry was emerging from its adolescent phase. GameSpot's Jeff Sengstack wrote that Myst is an immersive experience that draws you in and won't let you go. Writing about Myst's reception, Greg M. Smith noted that Myst had become a hit and was regarded as incredibly immersive despite most closely resembling the hoary technology of the slideshow. Smith concluded that Myst's primary brilliance lies in the way it provides narrative justification for the very things that are most annoying about the technological constraints imposed on the game. For instance, Macworld praised Myst's designers for overcoming the occasionally debilitating slowness of CD drives to deliver a consistent experience throughout. the game. The publication went on to declare Myst the best game of 1994, stating that Myst removed the most annoying parts of adventure games, vocabularies that you don't understand, people you can't talk to, wrong moves that get you killed and make you start over. You try to unravel the enigma of the island by exploring the island, but there's no time pressure to distract you. No arbitrary punishments put in your way. Some aspects of the game still received criticism. Several publications did not agree with the positive reception of the story. Jeremy Parish of OneUp.com noted that while Myst's lack of interaction and continual plot suited the game, it helped usher in the death of the adventure game genre. Edge stated the main flaw with the game was that the game engine was nowhere near as sophisticated as the graphics. Heidi Fournier of Adventure Gamers noted a few critics complained about the difficulty and lack of context of the puzzles, while others believed these elements added to the gameplay. Similarly, critics were split on whether the lack of a plot the player could actually change was a good or bad element. In a 2000 retrospective review, IGN declared that Myst had not aged well and that playing it was like watching hit TV shows from the 70s. People watch that, you wonder, in horror legacy in addition to the numerous remakes and ports of the game. Myst's success led to several sequels. Riven was released on October 29, 1997, in which Atreus asks the stranger to return to help him rescue his wife from Gen. Myst 3. Exile was released simultaneously for Macintosh and Windows systems in North America on May 7, 2001, and was later ported to the PlayStation 2 and Xbox consoles. Exile was not developed by Cyan. Presto Studios developed the title and Ubisoft published it, taking place 10 years after the events of Riven. Exile reveals the reasons for Atreus' sons being imprisoned and the disastrous effects their greed have caused. The fourth entry in the series, Myst IV: Revelation, was released on September 10, 2004, and was developed and published entirely by Ubisoft. The music was composed by Jack Wall with assistance from Peter Gabriel. The final game in the Myst saga was Myst v. End of Ages, developed by Cyan Worlds and released on September 19, 2005. In addition to the main Myst saga, Cyan developed Uru: Ages Beyond Myst, which was released on November 14, 2003. Uru allows players to customize their avatars, and renders graphics in real time. The multiplayer component of Uru was initially cancelled, but GameTap eventually revived it as Myst Online. Uru Live on February 15, 2007. On February 4, 2008, GameTap creative director Ricardo Sanchez announced that the game was cancelled, and that the servers would be shut down 60 days after the announcement. The game has since been brought back up again and is free to play. The newest and current iteration of Online Uru was made open source and various fan ages have been created. The Miller brothers collaborated with David Wingrove and wrote several novels based on the Myst universe, which were published by Hyperion. The novels, entitled Myst, The Book of Atreus, Myst, The Book of Tiana, and Myst, The Book of DNI, fill in the game's backstory and were packaged together as the Myst Reader. By 2003, the Myst franchise had sold over 12 million copies worldwide, with Myst representing more than 6 million copies in the figure. The game's popularity has led to several mentions in popular culture. References to Myst made appearances in an episode of The Simpsons. And Matt Damon wanted the Bourne Conspiracy video game to be a puzzle game like Myst, refusing to lend his voice talent to the game when it was turned into a shooter instead. Myst has also been used for educational and scientific purposes. Spectre recognized a primary school teacher, Tim Rylands, who had made literacy gains using Myst as a teaching tool, and researchers have used the game for studies examining the effect of video games on aggression. A parody computer game of Pyst was released in 1996. The game does not exhibit any puzzles, but rather a satirical free roam of Myst Island, which had been apparently vandalized by frustrated visitors. The television streaming service Hulu has obtained the rights to create a television series around Myst, according to Deadline.com in May 2015. The series would explore the origin of the main island featured in Myst. The series is being produced by Legendary Television, which had acquired the television rights from Cyan for the series in late 2014. The show will be produced by Matt Homish and written by Evan Doherty.